I'm Kat.
I'm Arden 13.
Welcome to our show, World Tiger.
Building Dragons.
Today we have a special guest.
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Tyler.
Tyler is joining us for one of World Anvil's summer camp prompts.
We're continuing the summer camp prompts. Are you excited?
I am super excited.
Awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. So Tyler has actually been a friend of mine for a little while now. We met at Gen Con last year.
Correct, as all nerdy friendships should start.
Sometimes at Wednesday night D&D as well.
Absolutely. But he is also about to launch an original campaign in his original setting, his home setting, Adulla, but he's been using World Anvil to manage all of it, and so I thought this was a perfect opportunity to get you in and talk about some world building.
And I will always talk about my world, and an excuse to spend 30 minutes writing in it is always good too.
That's absolutely true. I also really want Kat to be involved in the game, but I'm terrible at explaining other people's worlds or like content, so here we are.
Here we are.
But, speaking of which, if by some happenstance you, the viewer at home, have no idea what we're talking about World Anvil, what is World Anvil? It is a free in-browser tool that has literally everything that a world builder may ever need.
They also have some really incredible subscription options, incredible and affordable, with plenty of goodies to go check out.
And when you subscribe, they have tools for GMs as well, where you can manage your campaigns and also co-opt world building with your players.
The features are so cool. Please go check them out if you're interested.
For sure.
But I think it's time we got to the prompt.
Here we go.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Kat, what is the prompt?
Today we get to write about a rank or title that holds some sort of power in our world.
Okay. Tyler, you're going for Adulla.
I'm definitely doing a doula.
Kat?
Theatrum.
Okay, I've been waiting for this one because I'm so excited to talk about this one. I'm going with Nora.
Oh.
I am so excited for this one. You have no idea.
All right.
But if you are familiar with what we've been doing here, the same rules still apply even with Tyler here. We are giving ourselves 30 minutes to write down our initial prompt, to answer our prompt.
Each of our submissions have to be at minimum 300 words.
And after the 300 words and the 30 minutes are up, the three of us now are going to come back together and share what we came up with.
Some of our best ideas have come from collaborations.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right, let's get this done.
Time escape!
And we're back. 30 minutes later, and this time we have our laptops like in full frame.
Yeah.
They actually exist.
This is new. This is new for us. So, what are our feelings about this one? How did this one pan out for us?
Yeah, I had the idea in my head and had written like a sentence about this position when writing the city-state that it's involved in, so fleshing it out felt good and pulling the parts of inspiration that I used for it. So,
Kat?
I was on the struggle bus. I wasn't able to get through this one really at all. I don't know what it was. I couldn't get a vision or anything. I mean, that just sometimes happens. You start writing and you just can't get into it. So I'll definitely be excited to go back into this one and redo it. But yeah, this one just wasn't for me this time. So
Okay. Well,
yeah.
obviously, this is a great time also for collaboration. If you have if you're struggling with stuff that we can help work through, that's
Right.
that's what we're here for. So I mentioned that I was super excited about this one, and that excitement, I think, continued all the way to the end. Essentially, I was like, even the timer went off, and I was still like typing things like furiously. But the problem that I ran into with this one was that I think my excitement was a little overzealous at times. So like, I haven't read through everything yet that I wrote, but I'm almost positive that some of it is just incomprehensible.
no.
But that is obviously why we have until July 30th
Yeah.
to finalize all of these. And we can submit these as many times as we want to until that point.
Right.
Yep.
So that's an exciting caveat
For sure.
that I have. Tyler, would you like to go first?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, the world of Adulla it's heavily influenced by a caste system, which has the Chosen and the Dolmar. Chosen being magical people and Dolmar being non-magic people that are native to the land. And the Chosen oppress the Dulmer. And one of the city-states is the Melkrishi city-state, which is known for its bureaucracy. And those of you who have read any of the Brandon Sanderson Stormlight Archive books, this is heavily based on the Azish people that he wrote about. I wanted to include them in my world because you guys as players, well, hopefully Kat as a player, and definitely Arden as a player, are going to be overthrowing the central system and the Lord Emperor. So I wanted to see how would someone who was highly bureaucratic-based, highly tradition-based, and valued intelligence over everything else, how they would react in a situation like that. They aren't greedy, power-hungry necessarily. They just really like bureaucracy and think it's the way to solve all the problems. So the Prime...
They like the red tape.
They love the red tape. And the Azish is just awesome, the way Sanderson writes them, and I took a lot of influence from them in this position. And actually, to credit him, I named it the Prime is the position that runs the Melkrishi city-state. So you'll like this. The Prime is selected by an essay contest. This is actually this is completely stolen, I will admit, from Mr. Sanderson himself, and that is actually how it is. You put forth your intelligence, and the funny thing is it's not an essay like you would write, like that says your political promises, like I will build a wall or anything like that. It's actually more like taking the LSTAT, like you have to prove your critical thinking and your governmental theory more than anything else. So that is how the Prime is selected by the Dewan, which is a committee of basically old white guys that decide these things. So it's a little bit influenced by how the Cardinals select a pope, and a lot of it influenced by Sanderson. So just flushed out a lot of that stuff. And then to continue, the whole idea of Adulla is the rub between the Dulmer and the Chosen and that oppression. The Prime is almost always, in the last millennia that it's existed, has been a Chosen, and a Chosen that was probably a Dewan before. So even though it is open, is it truly open is the question that any Melkresian would ask themselves.
Okay.
So that's the Prime that I wrote 300 words about today, which was good because it fleshed it out for anybody who wants to be in a Melkresian in my world.
Absolutely. And
the essay.
Do you want to talk about the essay contest?
I mean, I like that a lot, actually. That's really cool.
It's just different, and I like things that are different. And then the other idea I always have as a DM in my case, and GM in other cases, is something that you could throw a wrench in the system as players. And so how would you, if there is a Melkresian player in your group, if you maybe assassinated the Prime, which by the way the Prime serves for life, which has caused issues in the past, just like the Supreme Court sometimes causes issues because when they get up in their older years, some of those rulings are kind of incoherent. Similarly happens with the Prime, but maybe you assassinate the Prime and then write a really awesome essay for your Melkresian character and they become the Prime. So those are the types of things that it's not this feudal system or, you know, familial system or anything like that. Literally anyone can become it. So it adds a little bit of a different city-state in my world.
Sure. Was there a part that you, I don't know what your style is necessarily when you approach a prompt in World Anvil? How do you kind of tackle that? So
it's a little ironic because I watch your guys' videos, obviously, and I know that you kind of made fun of the dietary habits of the dwarves, I think was the example you used. But
I love that one.
One of the things I really like about World Anvil is when I go in and write, when you start with something, in this case we were starting with a rank, it has a bunch of areas and a bunch of sections like a wiki would have about the rank. And so when you only write 100 words describing the Prime, you're like, I don't know what else to talk about. Mine, I went through the qualifications, the appointment, which is obviously a big deal with the essay, the duties, and then the grounds for removal and dismissal. Those were all sections in the actual article type, as they call it in World Anvil, that spurred me on to continue writing and not just put something small like we've seen on every video game wiki where you're like, oh, this character is really interesting, and you click on it and then there's like a sentence written,
right.
like they appear in this. Like it helps me flush it out for my characters. And then it's also little stuff like the cross-linking, so related locations, related organizations, their term length, all of these little bullet points that you can fill out that flushes it out and honestly makes you look like a better world builder than you actually are sometimes.
I can agree with that one.
And does those things and helps you categorize it or whatever it is. So the way I actually do it is I pull the vignette on anything I possibly have written before. So in this case, I took the one sentence I had written in the McCurshy article, and then I just dive down into the bottom area where these prompts are and start filling those out. And then once I have that flushed out, then I go back and complete the vignette. So that's kind of my World Anvil process.
Okay. I really like it. You said it's called the article type?
Mm-hmm,
okay, so I've missed that detail. But yeah, we've been talking about that just because that really helps for me specifically when I'm starting to write something and maybe it's not something that I've even really thought about, and I sit down there and like, for the appointment specifically, not specifically with this rank that I came up with, and we'll talk about later, but definitely when you get down to such things as the dietary habits of dwarves, it's like, I didn't think about that, but now I'm thinking about this like group of dwarves, where they are, what their culture like dictates, and so on and so forth. So I really do like that format. I really like that plan.
And as you mentioned, you can always skip over things. So there was equates to is one of them I didn't do. Requirements is one I didn't do. So even though I like to use those, if it's one that just isn't relevant, just skip over it and go to the next one, and you'll get that inspiration. And then you're writing these couple little sentences, and it just flushes everything out so much better.
My thing about the equates to, and I'll talk a little bit more about it when I talk about mine, but equates to, I also kind of struggled a little bit, because for me, when it says equates to, then that gives me the opportunity to draw an illusion from reality. And
so it's not necessarily, so what they're referring to, and the other cool thing about all these little prompts that I use is there's a little sentence below where they talk about what you might want to put in this area, and the equates to one says what equivalent ranks exist in different organizations. What I think they're referring to is other organizations in this world that you're building.
Sure.
So in my case, I was thinking about putting in for the Prime, it equates to the other leaders of city-states. And so they're all named different things in every city-state, but this level is equal to, if you're looking at the org chart of how it works, it's on the same level as these other city-state rulers in my case.
Sure. So, was there one of those under prompts that you really enjoyed going into that you maybe scrolled by and initially didn't have any thoughts on, but then as you
so something that you might not think about as a world builder when you're writing a rank is you're going to say, okay, here are the 15 guys that used to be king, and yada yada yada. But one of them that I came across was duties and responsibilities, and I was like, you never really talk about what are the king's duty? What is he responsible for? What is the king? What powers does he have? What's, like if I was writing this, like when I was thinking of the rank, I kept thinking of like the Pope. Like, how would you write it for the duties of the Pope? What is it he does every day? What is it he does on extreme circumstances, and what that would be. So duties was one that I didn't have anything thought of when I went into this, what I would write there, that I then typed out, which is also I came up with, he's the Lord Emperor's main law writer and lawyer, to cover him when the Lord Emperor... So basically the Makrishi people write all the laws for the Empire, not just themselves, because they are seen as the ultimate geeks on all things bureaucracy.
Sure. And I also like the difference between, because when I saw that too with duties and responsibilities, but I'm almost positive that when I started writing it, underneath they have the little blurb that kind of puts it better into perspective. I'm almost positive I was writing responsibilities and not duties, so I had to switch those.
Yep. But it helps out so much because it gives you these little things. And I mean, obviously I'm writing in a fantasy world. Sometimes it will be like technology or equipment, and it's like, well, that doesn't necessarily fit for my world. And
right.
I have a very low magic world overall, so sometimes it doesn't fit. So you just skip over those prompts.
Absolutely.
And go down to the next one. And then you have something like length of term. That was another one that I hadn't thought about. Like, I knew it was life in my head, but when it prompted it there, I was like, well, my players don't know what's in my head, so me putting it down means they know, well, we got to kill this guy. It's not It's not, we
Wait
can
until the end of
impeach
his
him
term,
or
right.
impeach him or something like that. Like, he serves for life.
Okay. So you didn't put that. So you mentioned earlier dismissal terms. There's no dismissal terms.
Nope.
Unless the Lord Emperor basically says.
Yeah, I mean, the
"You're
Lord
outta here."
Emperor would basically just kill him because.
Right.
So the other thing that I didn't say about this world, which hopefully intrigues Kat, is the Lord Emperor is actually an all-powerful beholder. So that makes it very interesting as well, because he's obviously a very strong magical being, and there's not many magical people in my world. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, if he really wanted to, he could choose one of the many eye stalks and just take out the prime if he wanted to.
That way. So, why go and impeach him when you can just
just get rid of him.
Just get rid of him.
Yeah, but the line I like that I wrote the most, and then we'll talk about yours, is that when I was talking about like the older age of a Supreme Court justice and things like that, that has led to issues. The term limits lead to issues here too, where when in their old age the prime begins enacting crazy laws and red tape. In true Malcresian fashion, these laws are highly debated, but still active. So there's always these. There will be these weird laws in Malcresi, and they'll be like, oh yeah, that was the crazy prime yada 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 that enacted that, and it will be something for these students to debate the validity of, but nobody has overturned it because it's so hard to overturn these laws in this society of red tape and everything. So I just that line just came to me and I wrote it and I was like, I like that.
That's silly. I like that too,
that a
but
lot.
that's silly.
And you guys will learn this about me if I come back again and things like that, but I like to add that element of humor and things that are just a little bit ridiculous in my world. Like,
Absolutely.
Being ruled by a beholder that's benevolent but also uncaring is just funny to me. But also you can make it super serious and your players can battle him, but it's also just a little bit tongue-in-cheek as well.
Sure.
Well, let's hear about yours, Arden. You were super excited about it.
Okay, yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, I can talk about mine. So I've mentioned in the show before that Nora has kind of been a passion project of mine since I was in 6th grade. It started as a very... I was in 6th grade. The big things that were happening in 6th grade were Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach. Like, that was the big anime, and that was, like, when I started to get into anime, so, like, I wanted to be a mangaka. I don't know what to tell you. This is little me in 6th grade, and it has changed from that weeaboo edge to still have the elements of what I loved from those classic anime, but also to incorporate a lot of kind of where the maturity of my thinking has come from and gone. So in this, the title, I'll not, hold it back. I usually have a whole story. No, so the title is a little bit of a long one, but there's a reason for that. The title is The Abyssal Emperor, Pontif of the Obsidian Church.
Okay.
So, already we get a couple things here.
Yep.
We get the biggest overarching thing is the inclusion and the smashing together of church and state.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is a power circulating or encompassing both church and state. Now I can get into the story. Basically, in Nora, I've talked about how there were some greater demons that were running around for a long time. This world doesn't get to deal with gods in that respect. But after the greater demons were defeated, they were able to move more into a civilized era, and this is an era called the Era of the Zodiac Kings.
Okay.
Back in those days, there were the Zodiac monarchs, the noble houses that were spread across the world, whole worldwide, were descendants from the Zodiac Kings. And those families, the Sagittarius, the Leo, the Pisces, and so forth, held power. However, where this comes into play is that at one point, a son of the House Leo, his name is Alexander Leonard, was basically going on a pilgrimage of self-discovery in the world's most renowned desert.
Okay.
While he was there, he was visited upon by a vision, a premonition in his sleep. And in this vision, he was in a vast, starless abyss. Suddenly upon his back, he felt a great heat and turned to find a being made purely of molten rock, of magma. This being very masculine. While he was gazing upon this being, he felt a great chill upon his back, and he turned to see another being, a feminine being, made of chilling waters. As he gazed upon these two beings, they came together to form a being of pure, polished obsidian, black stone.
Right.
From this being cascaded out the stars and the cosmos and the nebulas. And so he took this as divine providence to basically say, these are the gods who created everything, and they have been denied praise because of all of the minor cults that worshipped local deities around Nora, or even worshipped the greater demons, and now they're pissed about it and they want their due. So he took that as divine providence, as a vision that, I need to go on a holy crusade for these guys to win their favor. And he started something which is called the War of the Derelict King. Him being the derelict king. And at the end of the war, when the dust all settled, son fought against father in that war. It was very grotesque and very brutal. He was crowned with a crown of obsidian and a mantle depicting these three beings, and was given the title the Abyssal Emperor and the Pontif of the Obsidian Church.
Wow.
I went into, I kind of like the idea that they had, going into the sub-prompts that they had, qualifications, there are none.
Yeah.
It is a bloodline, descended thing.
Okay.
I like yours, and I'm sorry that I couldn't come up with something as incredibly,
I stole it. I
intricate
will
as
repeat, I stole it. So.
Sure, but it is a wonderful homage.
Yes.
In this, it's familial. However, it is descended from House Leo, and House Leo still holds power in their territory. So the way that it is broken down, not in terms of qualifications, but in terms of inheritance, is that the firstborn son of the house, or I guess the firstborn son of the High King, another name for this title is High King,
Okay.
will inherit the title. Will inherit the title as the Abyssal Emperor Pontiff of the Obsidian Church. I'm going to stop saying that. The second son will inherit the Fangblade, the Lion Fangblade, because there was a Lion Greater Demon, and now he's a Fangblade. Whereas the third son inherits the house.
I see.
And so that has caused a lot of contention in the past, because obviously there's always been a third son who is ruling the house, but that just means when the third son of the current king comes to claim his prize, all of that person's descendants get nothing.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a problem that the Leo family just has to deal with in general, but we're not going to get into that. Responsibilities here, again, I kind of took these out of duties because duty, the way that they put it, aside from being hilarious, was a duty was more or less an obligation and what is culturally understood for this person to do. And I didn't really get into that too terribly much, but I did get into the responsibilities, just basically saying, I have the line here at the very top that holding the title of the Abyssal Emperor grants you the privilege of ruling the world, essentially. He, as the Abyssal Emperor, he holds sway over the political and factionalism or whatever that is spread worldwide. There are no more Zodiac kings. They are now lords, subservient to the Abyssal King, to the Abyssal Emperor. He also has responsibilities pertaining to the military. He can create legislation. He can enact legislation. He can move armies. He can enlist armies. But the other thing here, because this is a two-parter kind of title, is that anything having to do with the faith, any doctrine, anything like that, there's no, holy text. And if there is a holy text, it is being updated with each Abyssal King. Because each Abyssal King has their own kind of variation or take on a certain thing that they want to shift. And being the Pontiff, they can just do that.
Okay.
So that has come into a lot of issues in the past. I'm not, I think in the previous video we talked about in counterculture. I also used Nora, but I talked about basically the people who were left behind, the traditionalists who don't adhere to the rule of the Abyssal Emperor, and I really do want to hammer home the fact and the idea that both of these factions have their merits in a way, but neither of them are great people.
Yeah.
I do like that they had the benefits here, because as a fantasy setting, there are obviously the benefits that come with being the king, but here, as a joke, I'm probably not going to keep it in there. I put healthcare, dental, eye care, a pension plan, life insurance.
It's a very advanced society.
Very advanced society. The Abyssal Empire is very progressive. I don't know necessarily about advanced.
Yeah.
Cultural significance. Mostly what I went into with cultural significance is the fact that this title is worldwide. It is something that everyone understands rules the world. It doesn't matter where you are under the purview in some way, shape, or form of the Abyssal Emperor and Pontif of the Obsidian Church. This also has a great deal of significance because up until this point, Nora had not had a strict divine presence or perceived divine presence. There were no gods. I have that. There's the quote that I start with, that this world has no gods. It was told to make do with demons. But with the advent of this regime, suddenly people had a god. Suddenly people had three gods. They had this trinity, and just the way that kind of molded and shaped things. Now you've got people that. To me, it's very strange, especially from the fact that one person holds all of this power and can dictate whether or not it's okay to be a faithless heathen or it's not okay to be a faithless heathen. And he has all of the power and sway in the world to do that because every other Zodiac Lord is subservient to him.
But the real question is, have you thought of making this ultimate ruler a beholder?
No. Unfortunately, Nora has never seen the like of the floating eye stalks. But that is an idea. That is an idea that I can do for perhaps a fun little illusion. I also like how we talked about how it has like the term of service and so on and so forth. I like the way that that's broken up here, and obviously this is for life. I kind of laughed when they said the type of rank, and they had that drop-down menu, and it said you have nobility, hierarchy, but then it also was a whole section dedicated to religious, and I couldn't choose both of them.
Yeah, you can't take both.
So I was like, how do I do this?
So because mine was something political, civic, or something like that was what mine was. But yeah, that you needed to select two of those, really.
Right, yeah. I got some alternate names in here that are pretty simplistic just because none of the common folk are going to say that long title.
No.
So they've got such things as the High King or the Chief of the Church, essentially, whenever referring to him in that light. And the thing is also I kind of wanted to build this interesting duality between, they're talking about the same person, but to the common folk sometimes either they don't understand that it's the same person because they will refer to him as the High King, or they'll refer to him as the Chief of the Church in the same context.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're giving more power to this single person. It's very totalitarian in that respect, and I kind of like that feel. I also like how one of the sub-prompts, because it's something that I was thinking about, but I hadn't ever really gone into it, was the the notable holders of that title.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. Obviously, it's a family line, but in terms of perhaps, maybe to add a little bit of a blurb here and there about another person, or direct them to another article about said person, I think it's interesting to have, especially for other titles, not just this one. But I will say, and it's the last thing that I will say in my explanation, The notable holders that I was able to put down was obviously the first, because I know the most about him, and if you think that title is long, listen to his. Alexander Leonard II, the derelict king, the first saint of the Obsidian Church and first Abyssal Emperor, Pontif of the Obsidian Church. That is on his gravestone.
Yeah. He's getting a little bit Khaleesi.
He's getting a Khaleesi, and
like,
that's always what I think about.
Yeah.
When I always go back to
Breaker
that
of
scene,
Chains
the
and-
Breaker of Chains,
Right.
when John is going into meat,
Yep.
and it's just titles after titles after titles, and John just rolls his eyes.
Yep.
Like, I'm
Yep.
so done with this.
But he has all those titles too. He just doesn't use them.
doesn't
Everybody
care.
refers to them. But yes. No, the other thing well, two interesting things when you were talking about that. First off, for World Anvil building, when you're doing those, highly, famous people that have held the position, it's really easy to actually do an @ mention, and then it creates an article of that person that's just a placeholder, and it puts it in your to-do list. So that's how I kind of started when I wrote my vignette. Every time I would mention something, I was creating the names on the fly. I would make it an article, and then it's just that placeholder article waiting for me to go and finish that later.
And then later on, you can fill that one
100%.
out too.
So if you want to have one with a crazy long name, another one that's eons down the line, you can do that, and it won't actually make it hyperlinked until you finish that other article. But then it still is drawn back. So that's something cool that I like to use. The other thing is when I'm thinking of titles, sometimes I like to think of what people might refer to them that are either not on their side, how they might be referred to negatively. So maybe that could be something like the Black King or something like that, or the Night King, or one of those more negative terms, because those are good to give to your players, because if they, or even to characters in a story or whatever, they might refer to that one because they don't like that king in a more negative way.
Sure, and actually, that is kind of a theme that runs in Nora, in the story that I have built around Nora and in Nora. The Derelict King is Alexander's title. That was what he was given when before he even got this long title. When during that war, that initial, after the vision and his initial struggle, he was referred to as the Derelict King by all of the people who opposed him, because he was the king of nothing.
Yeah.
But he was claiming to be a king,
Yeah.
to have had this divine vision of some kind. So yeah, no, I totally get that, and I like that. There's another character who may or may not be in the same family line who does the same thing.
Yeah.
Similar. But yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I came up with.
I like it. They're
There
two
you
good
go.
ones. And Writer's Block is
Writer's Block,
completely normal.
it happens, but we are planning on doing an episode kind of at the end of all of this where we'll kind of come together, and maybe you can join us. We'll talk about some of our favorites or some things that we like to work on, and then that's probably when I'll be able to be like, by the way, I did go back and I finished it up, or I did something. But yeah.
All right.
Is that it? So we're good then?
Yeah.
Prompt
I can close
completed.
this?
Prompt complete, yeah. We're all set.
Close this. Fantastic. So, good?
Yeah,
That's all I got.
that's all I got.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us again, Tyler.
It was a pleasure.
Would you consider joining us here soon?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Let us know in the comments below something that you liked about today's video.
Or share an idea that you're willing to share.
Feed those world building fires.
And if we can bug you to hit all those buttons that everyone else bugs you about, that would be greatly appreciated.
And if you haven't somehow already checked out World Anvil, you should definitely do it.
Alrighty, thanks again. I'm Kat.
I'm Arden13. I'm still waiting on that ramen.
And I'm Tyler.
Bye.